Hi, welcome back to Legally Bound. I am really excited about today's episode because this is one of my very favorite topics to talk about, and it was one of our most popular podcast episodes, but we thought we'd redo it for YouTube because it's worth listening to. So let me just cut to the chase here. Andy and I, are former prosecutors. We do criminal defense work. So a big part of criminal law, as you might know, is the investigation. Of course, the police investigation, FBI, federal agencies, whoever it is, they're doing an investigation. And Andy and I are not formally trained in investigations, granted, but we know a lot about them. And
we know how to destroy them. We know how to unpack them.
We know
how to question them.
We know how to question them. Exactly. We even go so far as in our amateur status as investigators, we even created a theory of how to do the best and most thorough law enforcement investigation that you possibly can. It's our theory. I think I created it technically. Andy disputes that. It doesn't really matter.
I presented it.
He presented it. It kind of originated in my mind after a failure on the part of a law enforcement agency to assist me in prosecuting a case. I'll talk about that later. It came to my mind then. I shared it with Andy, who, by the way, we met when we were both prosecutors. He was helping me on a case. I shared with him the thought, and then we both kind of created it together. Fair to say. So what is this theory, and how can you implement it in your life? Well, I have a good news for you because
very simple.
It's very simple. Very, very simple. It starts with this. What is a noun? I'm not tricking you. I'm just talking about the definition you learn in grade school. I don't know if they teach them anymore. I'm sure it's some other thing. But when I was in school, and I think most people our age would agree, it's a person, place, or thing. Sometimes an idea, but we don't need to get into that because that would probably throw them off, actually.
Yeah,
don't.
Just stick with
a person, place, or thing. That's a noun.
This is the nouns theory of investigation.
If you got that, you got it down pat. Let me just tell you. So, Andy, why don't you take it over from here? Tell them how this works in practice and why it's so important to stick to the fundamentals, stick to your nouns.
So when an investigation is taking place where an alleged crime occurred, investigators call that a reactive investigation. So an accusation comes in. You take that accusation and you investigate the nouns. So you have your complaining witness. You have the person who called in on 911 to complain of something happening. Whatever that initial complaint is, it contains nouns. And all you have to do as an investigator, just as a beat cop to start with, or whether you're a detective at the top of your game, you've got to look at what the nouns are, the people. You talk to them. The places, you go there. Take a picture of it, if you will. The things, collect them and potentially test them, but at least hold on to them so that if people later on want to test it, they can. People, places, things. And you go through that list as long as you can, because the next thing that you do is you talk to the people, and they're going to mention more nouns. Those nouns which seem in any way to be connected to the case.
First level. You got to
investigate those nouns. And so when I have you on a witness stand and you fail to have learned about the nouns theory of investigation, I'm going to ask you about the nouns in the case, because the jury thinks that sounds perfectly reasonable, and whether you did or did not investigate those various nouns. And if you failed to, you likely created reasonable doubt in the case. You did no good for the alleged victims in the case. You did no good for the government. We got to do better next time and investigate the nouns.
Andy is a premier defense attorney. Okay, that's true. It's a fact. He's a very, very amazing litigator. So he's telling you right now how to defeat him. How did you defeat a premier litigator on cross-examination? They're going to come at you. They're going to try to accuse you of not doing your job. Well,
I don't keep secrets.
Easy peasy.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
Do your job, and do it for the sake of the system, not for the sake of our clients or the sake of anybody in particular, but just the idea of what's right and what's just. It's really important. So Andy was mentioning how you figure out what a noun is, and it's really pretty simple because you get reports from people. A lot of times they're even in writing. So you can take a highlighter. This is a recommended piece of the noun theory. Take a highlighter just to make sure you're not missing anything. As you're reading a sentence, highlight every noun that you come across. That will give you your list of essentially your investigative plan. So this brings me to my story that
best story
originated
ever. The creation of the nouns theory.
So this story, and I'm sure that I'll miss some key details, but I'm doing my best. I was a prosecutor on a case. As a prosecutor, we were advising the investigators, these are federal investigators, about what they may need to do during their investigation before they finish their report. I received a report of an allegation of rape. And the allegation was very, very serious. And it involved a lady that had said that she was home alone during the day. Her neighbor, a male neighbor, actually entered her home and then pursued her, chased her, and attempted to rape her. She locked herself in her bathroom. She said that he used a pair of scissors that he found on a dresser near the door to gouge in the doorknob to try to break through, and was ultimately, I think, able to break in there. And that was part of the allegation.
Then she relented to the rape.
Well, then I think that was part of it. So it was really a very serious allegation, and obviously something that was super important to thoroughly investigate, I would think, and I think everyone would agree with me. I get the report and I'm reading through it, and it stuck out to me. Wow, somebody used scissors to gouge in a doorknob. I was looking through the evidence list and everything, and I then decided, okay, I'll call the agent. I said, oh, wow, I'm reading this. I only have the witness statement here. I don't see much else. Did you all happen to find any scissors on the scene there? Because they actually went to the scene right afterwards.
We talked about this. We wanted to get fingerprints off the scissors.
Fingerprints off the scissors. We were like, this is crazy if this happened. And they were confused by the question. They didn't understand the significance, I think. And then I asked them, well, did you see the doorknob? Like, did you take it and put it into an evidence bag or anything of that sort?
Or take a picture? Maybe
take a picture of it? No, we didn't do that. I was like, well, do you think maybe that would have been helpful as we're deciding what to do here? That would be really helpful because, she's telling the truth. I mean, we need to support that. We need to show how horrible this really was. I mean,
right. I mean, if this really happened, we're talking, potentially life in jail. We're talking 50 years. The idea of breaking into somebody's home and breaking into a bathroom, extraordinarily serious. So when we're prosecuting cases like this, we're not really sarcastic in that mode. In that mode, this is as serious as it gets. We need as much evidence because this is going to be perhaps the case of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they did, in fact, agree that this may be helpful. And they went back to the house, collected the items. And you know what? Actually, lo and behold, it turned out that there was not any truth to the allegations that were lodged. Fortunately, because that's a really horrible situation if true. But in this case, it was a false alarm. But we learned our lesson, I hope, about the nouns theory. In that case, how could you not take the scissors or the doorknob? Those are very clear nouns and very obvious in the victim's statement, saying, I entered my bathroom, I locked the door behind me,
right.
And suddenly somebody was banging on the doorknob.
And so that is the invention of the nouns theory of investigation. And as a brief aside, in conclusion, I think you'll also learn from that same story where some of our skepticism of very serious cases comes from. Every case we dive into, we take with a grain of salt, because on one end, they could be extraordinarily serious, but on the other, we have seen many examples of false allegations.
Well, it's serious on both
exaggerated allegations.
Because it's serious for the person being accused.
Exactly.
So you have to make sure that it is truthful or credible, let's just say.
Right.
Because the truth is something that I don't purport to know. I don't think any of us will ever
All we can
know in
do
these cases.
is look at the evidence that we have in front of us. And that's why the nouns theory of investigation really, truly is something that can help law enforcement all over the world. So please, use the nouns theory of investigation. I think that it's going to get us a lot closer to the truth. Until next time, we are legally bound.